I had just started my night shift at the hospital in my town, and I am the head surgeon, so my schedule is pretty full almost all of the time. On this particular night, however, something in the air seemed, I don't know, kind of ghostly. My first surgery is an easy one, just a simple wart removal on the back of one of my patients. I go through this surgery with ease, first putting his white wristband on, and then getting his anesthesiologist to help get pain medications and anesthetics for the patient. Everything goes as planned, and he comes out of the surgery with quite a few bandages, but nothing too severe. We give his pain medications to him, he rests, and is then released from the hospital. Every one of my patients receives a white wristband when being admitted to the hospital. This gives us their name, date of birth, allergies, all of that. There are other colors, however. Green wristbands indicate a latex allergy. Yellow indicates any disabilities. And the red wristbands are placed on the patients who die during surgery. Towards the end of my shift, I had one more surgery on a girl. She was 12. She needed surgery in her stomach due to bursting ulcers. This is one of my harder surgeries, but I have done this many times before, so the surgery was expected to go well. She receives all of her pain medications and anesthetics, and everything is being prepped for surgery correctly and efficiently. As I am cleaning my hands and arms and putting on my smocks, I see the innocent girl. She reminds me of my daughter and had the softest of facial features. We begin the surgery on schedule, as planned. Every detail is setting up for success in the operating room. We open up the girl's stomach to examine and figure out exactly where the ulcers are in her stomach. We begin the removal of the ulcers, and out of nowhere, part of her intestine begins bleeding. This is a dangerous thing to have happen, as it could lead to death. However, I jumped in and stopped the bleeding and patched up that part of the intestine immediately. She is saved, and we continue working on her stomach. The surgery was going perfect. After about a half hour, however, her heart rate began to be abnormal. The abnormal thumping was enough to make anyone a nervous wreck. We began to assess the situation, and we couldn't figure out any issues. Had she been diagnosed with a heart problem? Any allergy to an anesthetic? A certain sensitivity to a certain object we are using? There was no way to tell without screening, so we tried a few things like hooking her up to a heart support system, and continued with the surgery. Her heartbeat was still abnormal, but it was a steady abnormal. We had just finished removing every ulcer in her stomach, so we began to stitch her stomach up. Just as we were beginning to stitch up her stomach, one of my co-surgeons told us he wasn't feeling very well. We immediately told him to take off his garments and rushed to get out to avoid any infections when he suddenly threw up all over the girl's half-stitched stomach. This was very bad, possibly fatal. The vomit spread seeping into her stomach, and the image was absolutely disgusting. Blood mixing with the leftovers of a burrito from lunch. The other surgeons and I all exchanged glances, and we had no idea what to do. Everyone was pale as a ghost, and then we all jumped as the girl's heartbeat began to pick up at a pace unimaginable. Every thump was a thump closer to an infectious death. All of a sudden, the thumping stopped within 30 seconds of its starting. There was no time to respond, and the girl had died due to an infectious agent of that damn burrito. I was deeply saddened since the girl had reminded me of my daughter. I would never have thought any of this would have happened. Everyone was fine and everything had been going according to plan. The surgery had set itself up for success, but we had lost the patient in the operating room tonight. We were forced to put a red band around her ankle and put the sheet over her head. She had already turned pale and still was slightly warm from the warmth of her flowing blood. She is dead now. The blood is cooling and another life has been lost. After I calmed down and gathered myself, I began towards the elevator to go down to the garage where I usually park my car. It is 6 a.m. by now, and I am extremely exhausted from the night I had. I get in the elevator where there is another woman standing holding her IV carrier. which is normal because our patients usually like to take an early morning walk in the warm air. I didn't think much of it until the elevator stopped at another floor on the way down. The doors opened and I saw a girl who looked familiar. She had the same soft facial features as the girl we lost in the operating room and the same colored hair. She tilted her head slightly and started frowning and almost crying. Then there was a putrid smell beginning to come from her. She vomited blood, and a mixed liquid of puke and blood began to ooze out of her stomach. I suddenly realized this was the girl who was dead. I noticed her red band on her ankle and immediately pressed the closed door button and hit the button of the highest level floor possible. The woman in the elevator with me made a comment of how rude I was towards the girl, like she hadn't seen anything strange about her. I was extremely surprised at this and explained that she had a red wristband around her ankle, which meant she had died during surgery. The woman made an expression of realization, and she held up her hand where a red wristband was sitting on her arm. She says, "Like this?" and I too almost vomit in horror. As soon as the elevator opens to the roof, I run out to the edge of the building. I look down and realize the only way out of this is down, and the building is 10 stories high, so it would be asking for death if I decided to jump. The woman begins leaking blood from her ears and nose. She is smiling towards me as I back up to the very edge of the building. The elevator dings again, and just when I thought things couldn't get any worse for me, the girl and another man come walking out of the elevator as if they were zombies. The man had his red band on his ankle as well, and he was waving an extra arm at me like it was a weapon. I suddenly realized it was his own arm, and I screamed like a little girl in a horror movie. Only this was real life. As the three are closing in on me, I have nowhere to go but off the building. I begin praying harder than I have ever done before as I see no way out. I decide to jump off the building, and as I'm falling, I think, this is it. This is really it. I wake up in a cold sweat and I am shaking out of fear from my horrible and grotesque nightmare. I brush it off as I get ready for my night shift where I have to operate on a man's arm, a woman's brain, and a little girl's stomach. As I'm getting ready, I get a call inviting me to lunch at a Mexican restaurant with one of my employees operating with me today. I decline the offer as I am too tired to leave right at this moment and continue to get ready through my grogginess.